My name is Swami Nandan, and I'm the Director of Digital Manufacturing with Panasonic Energy. Patrick did mention about the Happy Monday part of it, so I'm not going to talk about any more of the event. Panasonic Energy has been in business for hundreds of years, as you can realize. I'm going to specifically talk about the lithium-ion manufacturing, battery manufacturing part of it, which is the mobility energy business division. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with all the EV batteries and the EV cars that run today. We are one of the largest manufacturers, along with a few others in North America. We are part of the largest gigafactory in Reno, and I'm based out of Reno. Had a very early morning travel. So just to give you some background in terms of what we do, we make the cylindrical lithium-ion batteries that go into the battery packs, and that's what runs some of the very famous Tesla cars that you talk about. These batteries have evolved over a period of time. The earlier versions used to be the 1865. The diameter was 18 millimeters and 65 millimeters in length. And we have evolved to something which is 2170 now, 21 millimeters in diameter and 70 millimeters in terms of the length. Got very high energy density, uses some very unique lithium-ion materials, which is our secret sauce in terms of Panasonic Energy, which we have been evolving. We make close to 6 million batteries now in Reno per day, which is a scale which is enormous. We run close to 15 assembly lines on a single day, most of the time, and the factory operates 24/7. So it's an enormous scale, makes around 40 gigawatts an hour sort of a scale, one of the largest, as I mentioned. We have evolved over a period of time. Some of you might be familiar, the Gigafactory which came in 2016. 2017 is when we started our mass production in terms of the 2170, which goes into the Tesla cars. We have been evolving, building lines, assembly lines, which were slow-moving and then became fast-moving lines, close to around 2 cells per second. That's the kind of scale that we do. Finally, in 2024, we hit around 10 billion cells. And from there onwards, we have been ramping up further. We have a new factory in Kansas, a new startup, very similar in terms of capacity. At full scale, it will produce close to around 35 to 38 gigawatts an hour. In 2026, this year, we actually rolled out our blueprint in terms of how to move from just being a cell manufacturing or EV battery manufacturing company to an energy technology company. Just want to go back, and what it means is we are going to start building cells and batteries which will go into data centers and a couple of other devices as well. Predominantly a Japanese company, as you can realize. We have been around the Osaka region in Japan, and in the US in Sparks and DeSoto in Kansas now. And today I want to talk about the smart factory paradigm of how we have rolled out in the last 4 years. So the whole journey for us has started with the implementation of the smart factory or the digital twin using Palantir in 2022. So towards the end of 2022, we decided to move away from the idea of a traditional data lake and IT/OT bridge to a business domain of data, what we call as ontology, entities and relationships. We actually partnered with Palantir. We went into a strategic partnership by 2023. We actually rolled out a use case which demonstrated that data from disparate sources, which could be equipments, machines, PDFs, videos, texts, everything which used to take close to a month to comprise and build reports. We were able to roll that out and build those reports within 2 hours. That was the kind of scale and productivity that we saw with this brilliant factory and smart factory, and that's when we went into a much larger strategic engagement of transforming our entire digital twin using Palantir. By 2024 and 2025, we had close to 80 projects which were deployed. I know a lot of you have talked about this. The scale of AI and how much productivity it demonstrates really. We have seen at least 70% success rates in all the projects that we took forward and then rolled this out to production. We are a manufacturing company at the end of the day, so we use the data at scale, and we use that for productivity, efficiency, OE, transformation, from vision analytics to textual SOPs, digitization, everything. That's what we did in 2024 and 25. By 2026, this year, we have decided to use the power of ontology with physical AI. So rolling out AMRs, and then, of course, all the transformations have to be very agentic in nature. That's a mandate which comes down pretty much top-down for us. All our efficiency, at least 30% of those projects have to be AI-led. That's what we are driving towards. And we have seen some great success around that, which I'm going to talk about, how exactly we are piloting the AMRs and augmented reality stuff. Now, very high level, our smart factory overview is very different from what a traditional data lake would talk about, where you have technology-oriented data systems and then you connect all of them together. We actually took Palantir's ontology and AIP, and we connected all close to 200 data sources today. And then we built business domain objects, which then can flourish all the downstream systems and the use cases directly by users. So people within quality, production, technicians, they build the use cases instead of people from technology background sitting down and writing code. That's the difference that ontology has created instead of using data lake principles. We have close to 500 data sets that we have been able to create. And at this point of time, we have 4,000 users using this on a daily basis. At any point of time, we have seen around 1,000 users plugged in using ontology data sets to drive productivity on the factory. These use cases actually drive balancing of inventory in supply chain. It actually allows us to do our production planning and scheduling, which is all inbuilt. We have the spare parts from, as you can understand, we are a manufacturing company, so we do our optimization of the spare parts inventory using LLMs and GenAI. We have operations where the material exchange, as you move from one particular assembly area to another, how do you optimize the handshake? That's something which we drive. We manage our defect management. People talked about the cameras and the visions and everything. We have implemented those using some of the frontier models that we have retrained at our own locations. We have material guidance in terms of handling them now based on the data that we have been collecting for the last 7 years. So there's a guidance which comes down to all the SMTs. So the training time when these technicians come up versus when they become very effective has reduced by almost 50%. So that's the kind of scale that we run. From a finance standpoint, we actually work with reducing our workforce planning structure, so where exactly the labor has to be moved towards. That's some of the things. We track our P&L completely now using not just the core SAPs and the oracles of the system, but we use Palantir, again, ontology, in order to demonstrate what exactly looks like a forecast versus where exactly we'll land. So those calculations come in. The invoice management, all of that has been digitized. We actually use that to tie what exactly the invoices are versus where exactly a leak in the invoice might come in. All those have been digitized using vision models again. And then finally, quality and safety, which is one of the most important KPIs on our side. So we do real-time loss cost analysis. These are some of the most important KPIs that we govern. The cost of quality and the BOM cost is very important in an industry like an EV. So we actually monitor that real time in terms of where exactly the opportunities for loss cost optimization are. We have alarm triages, and this is where the OT and the IT convergence happens. How do we take the OT data, we move that through SCADA layer, goes into Palantir, and how in real time these agents then flag up alarms. And some of them even through rule-based systems, take actions to remediate those systems. There is material exchange and scape monitoring as well, because once the material scapes into final product at that point of time, it becomes a risk for delivery. And if the cells have been delivered to the customer, then it becomes an aftermarket problem. So we have those now as part of the quality inspection processes, which have been completely digitized as well. the way we think of Industry 4.0 versus now what we are evolving towards an Industry 5.0 paradigm, we think of the large language models or the Gen AI and the vision models coming together, but then putting human at the center of everything, decision making. So that's the balance that we have been able to build in Panasonic Energy, where frontier models have been able to run agents, but then the human comes into picture again to transition them. We have the data sources, the logical sources, and the system of actions. The human still is in control over there from the final inference standpoint. These are some of our real-time agentic deployments. We actually have close to 2,000 agents running at this point of time, and most of them, 80% of them, have not been built by technology grads, but they have been built by people technicians, quality technicians, maintenance technicians. That's how ontology has driven these use cases faster. We have an Ask Atom solution, which is our own proprietary solutions in terms of asset maintenance, the smart asset maintenance. Intelligence Hub is a single pane of glass where it brings together all your operations, your dynamic workforce, your maintenances in one single view. It allows you to kind of look at what exactly are the areas where there could be either material blockages or labor blockages. All of that comes into one single view. We have quality agents running behind the scene. Of course, this is using a lot of agentic AI, but then it goes into our SOPs, some of it also vision, to kind of determine where exactly a potential loss cost situation might occur. They run in the background, they flash signals, then after that, the technicians, particularly from a maintenance standpoint, can work on those work orders. Material flow, as you can see, it actually allows us to be proficient in terms of how exactly to move the material between different lines, different workstations. They have been digitized. Cost, again, from a BOM standpoint, the bill of material standpoint, this is where we actually look into our material and try to do the R&D in terms of what are the right material usages and where exactly we should work with procurement in terms of driving an optimized supply chain. So that's how we monitor the cost side of things. Vision engineering, we actually do apply most of the time a two-factor authentication of whatever goes out from an inspection standpoint. So once the cell comes out, if you're familiar with a EV battery, it goes through a final inspection process after the formation, after your charge and discharge happens. And at that point of time, there is a bunch of parameters that you have to monitor. And those vision engineering used to be done by humans at some point of time. Right now, it's done through fixed cameras, which are deterministic in nature, and then there is the LLMs, the vision models, which actually determine as well. So we have combined both of them, and based on that, there is at least 30% productivity in terms of finding out cells which used to leak out. So those are the kind of vision engineering use cases that we have been able to drive using Palantir. I want to very quickly show you an example of our AI-powered CMMS system, the maintenance management system. This is particularly developed within Panasonic Energy. This uses Palantir ontology again. This is where the bridge between the OT and IT comes into picture. So behind the scene, the SCADA systems, they connect to the sensors and the PLCs. They grab the data. We actually move the data into the AWS cloud. We build a unified namespace of that, and then it goes into Palantir in terms of processing the data. Once the data has been processed, now everything is prescriptive in nature at this point of time. So instead of reactive work order, maintenance work orders coming up, or a planned maintenance work order driving all the maintenances, this is pretty much looking at signals coming from SCADA. And at that point of time, if there are thresholds which are getting breached, it creates the work orders. It actually assigns technicians based on their SMT level, how proficient they are. It also allows them to go into historical references at that point of time to look into our SOP documents. So the RAG models have been implemented to show them exactly how situations like this were monitored and then evaluated for solutions in the past. So it gives all of them in this particular view. This is what you see over here. It's also looking at this point of time all our 3D drawings. What you see over here is our SOPs and 3D drawings. It actually picks up the 3D drawings and allows the users, the technicians, to understand what kind of spare parts, maintenance parts would be required and how exactly to put them together as part of the components. So all of that is built using the ontology layer. It also uses a doc gen feature. And what this feature does is not just the plain vanilla RAG models where you take PDF documents and then kind of compress them into information. It actually looks at voice to text from previous technicians in multiple languages. Again, it's a very Japanese company, as you can realize. So there are technicians who have been very heavily trained in the Japanese language. And those technicians, once they maintain a particular work order, all that data, all that intelligence is built in over here on a particular ticket. And then when the work orders are recreated for a particular scenario, the DocGen generates what is a potential solution for that based on historical references from multiple other voice, which could be Japanese, it could be English, anything. This is how we do it very quickly, deep diving into the Ask Atom solution, very heavily focused on improving the operational efficiency and plant safety. Safety is a very important KPI for us. We look into the yield quality and uptime. And this is how we bring together the IT and OT architecture. So at the plant layer or the factory layer, at the OT side, we have the SCADA historians, and then I'm taking formation as an example over here, where you have a lot of data where the charge-discharge really happens. The OT layer ideally streams that into a unified namespace at AWS using Kafka streams. And then we build the agentic layer in Palantir, which determines what is the ontology of the entire asset from a technician's or a supervisor's point of view instead of a technology point of view. It has the governance and lineage around what are the kind of technicians and what proficiencies they will be required in order to act upon those. Those governances are put into picture. And then the decisions are made mostly by the agents. The technicians, what we have seen is where they used to be trained for 6 months, now we are able to find proficiency with them within 2 months. So there is a huge productivity improvement of how exactly we train our technicians to start working on these particular work orders. The wrench time particularly has improved by around 30%. That is what we saw with this particular solution. Very consolidated diagram, but what we are seeing over here is the OT on the left-hand side. Most of the data, which is the PLCs and your sensors coming in, and this is the ontology layer at the center, which processes all of this particular data, puts into a business domain. And on the right-hand side is your solution, which is a workshop. So the low-code, no-code feature of actually building this entire solution, and most of it is powered by Gen AI at that point of time, some of it by vision models as well, as it reads through RAGs and other features. I'd like to conclude with what exactly we are seeing as a future at PECNA in terms of the agentic AI. We have seen that the OT is moving beyond just the supervisory data acquisition layer. So we used to think of SCADA as collecting data and alarms coming up, but what we have seen is that the SCADA data is slowly driving agentic behavior. So we have been able to train models in the cloud and then deploy them on the edge. And these models continuously monitor and take actions instead of humans now waiting for things to happen. And that's what is happening with the OT side of things, where it has gone from just being supervisory to becoming an agent of itself. IT has become more than the data fabric. Just building an industrial data fabric is no more the point of view. What we are building is agents which can then learn from all the different domains of data. So the supply chain learns from quality, the quality learns from maintenance, the maintenance learns from finance. All of that data learning, and then the frontier models optimization that happen, they go to the OT layer. That's the bridge between the OT and IT that we're talking about. And finally, the convergence of all of this through physical AI. That's where the deployment of the GPUs have started coming into picture. We are deploying our first AMRs now, actually building those mobile robots which can actually move the material from one point to another without the humans coming into picture. Also augmented reality, particularly in terms of self-training. So a lot of these particular maintenance tasks are now getting self-trained. Even our HR behavior is getting self-trained using these augmented realities, because it's a very different HR domain when you talk about a supply chain company versus where you're working on a factory floor of very heavy industrial and manufacturing. So that's the agentic convergence that we see between IT and OT. Let me take a pause and see if there are questions at this point of time.